good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending when and where you're watching this episode. My name is Patrick Henz, and this is another solo episode, but I hope next time again with Ganna Pogrevna. So today's topic is Scuderia Lancia. Some of the last episodes we discussed a little bit more psychology. We discussed also internal frauds, directly or non-directly related to Formula One, but more to their sponsors. Today we do a quite classic topic. We are speaking about one of the teams, maybe a team as it was active shortly in the 1950s is more forgotten. Maybe you think more of rally sport, but really Lancia also had been in Formula One briefly. So this is where we want to have today the focus. So welcome, and I hope you will enjoy it. A short reminder for the ones who are just listening to the audio podcast. This is designed to be like what we call an enhanced audio podcast, meaning Ganna and I always share some nice, interesting images, photos, drawings, whatever. This to underline the topics we are talking about. So if you're just listening to us, you may consider addressing this episode, for example, in YouTube Music, or Spotify, where it is available in its video version. Okay, Lancia. Lancia is an Italian car manufacturer and a subsidiary of FCP Italy SPA, which is currently a Stellantis division. Of course, for the ones of you listening to us from Europe, you should be well aware of this. Here in the US, if I'm correct, Lancia was never on the market, same as for Mexico, Canada, and I think also they never have been officially in the market in South America. So it's one of the typical Fiat brands for a long time, which is now part of the international Stellantis group. It's a legal entity which was formed in 2007. I'm speaking now about Stellantis, and its history can be traced back to Lancia and Company, a manufacturing company founded in 1906 in the north of Italy, in Turin, by Vincenzo Lancia and Claudio Forolin. Became Fiat then at the end of the 1960s, as the company had been struggling financially for a longer time, a topic why, for example, they also exited Formula One. So it is a family company. Main founder Vincenzo Lancia, born August 24 in 1881 and died February 15, 1937. Besides being the founder of Lancia, he was also a racing driver and engineer. He was the youngest child of the family. His father worked as a soup canner, making money in Argentina before returning to Turin and start his own business. No unusual history. We had a lot of immigration from Italy to Argentina, something which you still can see when you are visiting the South American country. A lot of Italian heritage culture still quite visible in today's Argentinian life. And also not unusual that sometimes immigrants had been lucky making money but use this to go back to their home countries. He worked as a bookkeeper when he went back, then became friend with Count Carlo Biscaretti di Rufa, who, for example, has been the person who designed the famous Lancia logo in 1911. Now, Vincenzo Lancia became chief inspector at Fiat and was also a test driver there, although only in the age of 19. His driving impressed the Fiat bosses, and he was invited to drive their cars in races, and his first success was in 1900 in Fiat's second race. Lancia led the first lap of first French Grand Prix at Le Mans with a time of 53 minutes and 42 seconds. He was exceptionally fast driver, often fastest of all, but also often suffered a mechanical failure. Example, in 1906, Vincenzo Lancia won the Gold Cup in Milan, driving the Fiat 2080 40 HP standing for horsepower. His first car was built in 1907, the 12 HP Alfa, which included much of the technology now taken for granted, and he produced groundbreaking models such as the Lambda and the Aprilia, both Lancia models. In 1913, together with Gaspare Bona, Battista Farina, also known as Pininfarina, Giovanni Battista de Valle, Pietro Monateri, and Enrico de Angeli founded Pininfarina SPA, the famous coach builder and design firm, which is headquarters in Campagnano, Turin. He died, unfortunately, quite young with a heart attack on February 15, 1937, just before the Aprilia was put into full production. He was 55 years old, and he lies buried at Fubello. His wife, Adele Miglietti, and their son, Gianni Lancia, continued the management of the car manufacturer, this from 37 to 1955. So this a little bit on the founder. If we are speaking about Formula One, even if Vincenzo was race driver himself, he was active before Formula One mostly, and that's why his son Gianni practically made the next step and was aiming to make Lancia a well-known brand in various races, including a Formula One championship. After Vincenzo Lancia's death, son Gianni became director of the firm and and with this, Lancia started to take part more frequently in motorsport, eventually deciding to build a Grand Prix car. Vittorio Jano, the famous engineer, which Enzo Ferrari brought to Alfa Romeo, for example, before he left, Enzo left Alfa Romeo, and also Vittorio Jano left the company a little bit later, not going to Ferrari, but going to the Lancia team, as they had the vision to make Lancia more famous via participating at various motorsports events, including Grand Prix. Jano became the new designer for Lancia, and his project was the Lancia D50 that was entered into the 1954 Spence Grand Prix first time, where Alberto Ascari took the pole position and also drove the fastest lap. Next season, in the 1955 Monaco Grand Prix, Ascari crashed into the harbor after missing a chicane, a famous scene, and it happened twice at the Monaco Grand Prix. First, Ascari had the accident and fell together with the car into the sea. Luckily, he was rescued. Nothing happened to him. At that event, the next time, the next driver had less luck and died in such an accident at the Monaco Grand Prix. Nevertheless, also Ascari didn't have a long life after this event. Just 1 week later, he was killed in an accident driving a Ferrari sports car at Monza. He was just there casually, privately, and asked the person driving this Ferrari if he can have some laps with the car, and there accidentally it happened. With Ascari's death and Lancia's financial problems, as already mentioned, the company withdrew from Grand Prix racing, and altogether Lancia took 2 victories and 10 podiums in Formula One. Remnants of the Lancia team were transferred to Scuderia Ferrari, where Juan Manuel Fangio won later with this car the 56th championship. Famously, the Lancia team was offered to Enzo Ferrari. At that time, Enzo Ferrari had to understand that his own car was not competitive, and most likely it would have been very difficult to make it competitive. So having the opportunity acquiring Lancia together with Vittorio Jano and the six cars was a great opportunity. Uh, uh, Reportedly, he bought it very, very cheap, and also Giovanni Agnelli, the famous Fiat boss, seemed to have supported Enzo financing this deal. Here you have to know that even if Giovanni Agnelli and Enzo Ferrari had been from completely different parts of society, they always had a very good relation, something we discussed, for example, in our data-driven F1 episode about Luca Montesemolo, who was the third part of this triangle. Here you see the famous Vittorio Jano in much earlier, in 25, with the Alfa Romeo P2. So the Lancia D50 was a Formula One racing car designed by this person, Vittorio Jano, in 1954. The car's design made use of many innovative features, such as the use of the engine as a stressed chassis member, the off-center position of the engine to allow a lower overall height, and pannier fuel cells for better weight distribution and aerodynamics. In total, 6 of the cars were built, and 2 of them are displayed in Italian museums today. Quite common practice back at these days. The cars had been recycled. That's why, unfortunately, a lot of these cars did not survive. When related to the D50, at least 2 did. But for example, other famous Ferrari cars like the Shark Nose, which you find on various classic racing events still today, none of these cars survived. So all of these Shark Nose, which you see in museums, on racetracks, these are all replicas, and maybe they are also from the D50 are some replicas when you see them on the racetrack, because there are only 2 which have survived, which is a pity because, as I've mentioned, it was quite revolutionary design, and especially the car easy distinguishable based on the 2 pannier fuel cells on the left and right, which helped the weight distribution of the car. An important topic which Vittorio Jano understood. It's not only about horsepower, not only about aerodynamics, but also weight distribution is a key success factor for a racing car. And this what had been his result. By the way, this model, you see, this is the Lancia D50 before acquired by Ferrari, so it still has the Lancia logo, and I may come back to this at the end of today's episode. Here you see a drawing underlining the described. Unfortunately, it's in German, but it is practically what we already mentioned. Some nice photos for the ones of you who see us on Spotify, YouTube Music. So this is the original Lancia D50, still with the Lancia logo in front. Let's come to the racing legacy. We are in 1954. We are quite in the middle of the season, as it took Lancia longer than planned to finish this car. You have to understand, Lancia was a relatively small team with limited resources. Nevertheless, they had 2 star drivers, Alberto Ascari and Luigi Villarosi. And the long-awaited Lancia D50 arrived using their 90-degree V8 engine as a stiffening aid for the chassis. They were simple but brilliantly designed. Really, Vittorio Jani had been really one of the best designers at that time. So you can imagine him as a kind of Adrian Newey today. This was Vittorio Jano back 1950s, and of course before Formula One. Ascari, we're speaking about the Spanish Grand Prix. Ascari immediately set the fastest practice lap and led from the pole. Villoresi and the fellow Lancia retired with brake trouble after just one lap, and Ascari scrambled to clutch problems after 9 laps. So a typical problem of new cars, especially if they are designed by a smaller team. They may be fast because their design is revolutionary, but there are problems with reliability, and this is what the Lancia D50 was really struggling with 1954 and also 1955. Another great photo of the car in action. Here, 1955, Alberto Ascari at the Torino Grand Prix, so practically Lancia's home Grand Prix. Another picture back from the time 55. On the left, Luigi Villoresi, Alberto Ascari, Eugenio Castellotti, and on the right, you see Vittorio Jano, who were already with a higher age. Okay, that was 54. Now we're coming 55. Unfortunately, quite tragic year for Alberto Ascari. And at the end, also only a very short appearance of the Scuderia Lancia, as they only participated 2 races, Argentina and Monaco, where we already discussed. We had the accident of Alberto Ascari, and at least the second position later in the race by Eugenio Castellotti, and fifth Luigi Villoresi, and the famous Monacan driver Luis Chiron, sorry, sixth position. So it really underlined the potential of this still quite new revolutionary car. In the 55 Formula One season, Alberto Ascari won 2 non-official races, which we had a lot in the 1950s with the D50, but had a deadly accident later in a testing session, as discussed. This tragedy, together with financial problems, led to the situation that Lancia sold their complete racing team to the still young Ferrari team. This as Ferrari's 55 racing cars, the 555 Super Squalo and the 625 F1 not brought the hoped success. They updated then later the D50 and used it for the 56th season. Result, the championship for Juan Manuel Fangio in exactly this Ferrari D50, or Lancia Ferrari D50 as it still was called in the beginning of the season. Important, Ferrari not only acquired the 6 cars themselves, but also the whole team, including the staff and Vittorio Jano. We can assume that, and this was now the second time that Vittorio Jano and Enzo Ferrari worked together. And something I think we can assume that these 2 times Vittorio Jano went to join Enzo Ferrari not only based on financial reasons, but he shared Enzo's racing vision and practically his dream. If you can dream it, you can do it. Famous words Enzo Ferrari should have said once. Both men's ideas and goals had been similar. Vittorio believed in the Ferrari team and company, so he took twice the risk to work for this relatively still young and small company instead of staying at a safe place as the well-known Fiat company or the Alfa Romeo company. So now, next year, 1956, on the right, you see already the Ferrari Lancia D50. You see the Ferrari car on the left with the well-known Ferrari badge. In the front, it had the Lancia logo. So that's why the car is called Ferrari Lancia D50, as we see it here. Juan Manuel Fangio joined the Scuderia Ferrari after he left Mercedes-Benz, whom he had won the 1954 and 1955 titles. But due to the infamous accident at Le Mans, Mercedes-Benz has withdrawn from motorsports in total. Ferrari acquired the folded Lancia teams the year before, including their car, and put together a strong team containing Juan Manuel Fangio, Eugenio Castellotti, Luigi Musso, and Peter Collins. Fangio won the opening race after commandeering Musso's car after his own car had broken down. Quite a common option in Formula One in the 1950s. You have a number one driver, as clearly Juan Manuel Fangio had been. If he had a technical problem and still make it back to the pits, the team would call in one of the other drivers who had the contractual obligation to hand over the car to the number one driver. Fangio won the opening race after he received Musso's car. Collins and Fangio's teammate at Mercedes, Stirling Moss, now driving for Maserati, provided the biggest challenge to the title defense, as both drivers won 2 races so far before going into the final race of the season. Fangio had an 8-point lead over Collins and the consistent John Berra driving for Maserati. The only way he could lose the title would be to score no points, with Collins winning and setting fastest lap. Then happened Fangio retired, and Musso was unwilling to share his car with Fangio. Collins had a great chance then, due to Musso's reactions, to not share his car. So he had the shot to win the championship, but in an act of sportsmanship, instead of following his own dream, winning the championship, he went into the pits and handed over to Fangio, and allowing him so not only to win the race, but also the 3rd title in a row. Fangio and Enzo Ferrari have been deeply moved by this, but Collins just said that this was okay. He's still a young driver and he would have many shots at the title, something which tragically would not happen, as he also had a deadly accident in a race, something which we discussed a little bit more on deep in our episode Beyond Enzo Ferrari, the episode which we published after the Enzo Ferrari movie earlier this year, where we not only discussed the happenings of the Ferrari movie, but a little bit more the next year with all the tragic deaths at the team. Gunnar and I always recommend books, and I will come back to this later, and of course visiting the museums. So this is a photo I took at the Ferrari Museum in Mugello. There are 2 museums, the Enzo Ferrari Museum in Maranello and the Scuderia Ferrari Museum in Maranello, directly located besides the racing team. There they display various cars which won the Drivers' Championship, including the Scuderia, the Lancia Ferrari D50. So you see again here the car which supported Fangio winning the championship. On the left, on the right, the Ferrari badge. In front, the Lancia logo. I'm mentioning this because in the beginning, they always spoke in 56 about the Lancia Ferrari D50, but this changed a little bit over the months when they just spoke about the Ferrari D50, and also changed that the car would have the Ferrari badge, Ferrari logo in front instead of the Lancia. So you see this on these 2 photos. For example, on the left, you see the D50 short nose. You see clearly here the Ferrari logo. On the right, you see the long nose version, which Ferrari used on the more faster tracks. And also here, you see the Ferrari logo instead of the Lancia logo. So this changed a little bit, and so interesting. What you see here in the Ferrari Museum is the is restored related to the original version. Also, you see the sides, you don't have the exhausts as they implemented a little bit later on. So it's really a change which they did on the car, mechanical change, and that's what they also used as a reason to re-badge the car from the original Lancia to the Ferrari badge. Later, 57, they still used the D50 as the base. And again, as I said, they recycled the original D50, put in a more conservative design on top. You see, it does not have the left and right tanks, but it looks now like a quite conservative design. You may call it the Ferrari 801 or the Ferrari Lancia 801, a little bit as you like. But originally, it was completely badged as a Ferrari. Besides this, it wasn't that successful in the 57 season, so that's why after 57 they changed to a complete new car. Lancia in motorsports a little bit besides Formula One. You see here the D25, 24, sorry, also designed by Vittorio Jano and designed by Pininfarina, I mean, engineered by Vittorio Jano, the chassis, but the coach builder had been Pininfarina, and it looks a little bit as the famous Ferrari Testarossa, at least it reminds me to this car. In 1953, Umberto Maglioli won the Targa Florio at the wheel of the mentioned Lancia of the Lancia D20. But the same year, Lancia introduced the faster D24 sports car, the one which you see in the photo, which was an evolution of the D23 model, but rebodied as a Spider. Spider means open car. Its most significant victories were the 1953 Carrera Panamericana, the famous road race which we have from the north to the south of Mexico. The 1954 Mille and the 1954 Targa Florio, all very famous street races at that time. So this was really a very fast and you may say dominating car at this time. For most of us, we align Lancia with the rally sport, the famous Lancia Delta, or also the Stratos, as you can see here on the photo. In the World Rally Championship, they remain the most statistically successful marque until today, despite they already withdrew in 1993. Something where they want to connect to in the future, maybe starting, I think, in 2025, where they will have a special rally version of the new Lancia Ypsilon, also using quite interesting something like very similar to the Martini design, having the colors but not having the Martini logo, as they not will be sponsored likely by Martini, but the car and should connect to the rally tradition, and also for this they use a little bit a design which reminds me to Martini. Nevertheless, very famous, especially for Stratos, had been Alitalia as a sponsor. I remember I had such a remote control car in the Alitalia design. And so very successful, the Stratos, which had Lancia to win the 74, 75, and 76 constructors title. And later, the Lancia Delta had 6 consecutive wins of the constructors title from 1987 to 1992. The Delta is also the most successful individual model designation over to compete in rallying. All this gave Lancia a total of 11 championships, up to today over the years, and 15 European championships from 1969 to 1992. So really, Lancia's motorsports legacy is less the D50, as it only was active in two championships, and even not even had three had a total participation over the year, but at the end we only had three uh, Grand Prix weekends where the car really participated as Lancia. Later, of course, the next year it completed the whole season very successfully as the Lancia Ferrari D50, but part of Scuderia Ferrari. An important person I like to introduce you, Cesare Fiorio. He was born May 26, 1939, also in Turin. He served as the Formula One sporting director for Ferrari Ligier Minardi in the past. He has a degree in political science, and additionally he held the position of team manager for Lancia's Factory World Rally Championships team. So he was one of the key employees managing the success of the Lancia rally engagement. So he was really one of the fathers of all the success. Today, he is engaged as a television commentator. Notable, his son Alessandro Alex Fio pursued a career as a professional rally driver. Also, his other son is doing quite well, and we will come to him a little bit later. So you see here Cesare Fiorio with a Martini Racing umbrella, and exactly these colors you see in the first designs, as now in 2024, Lancia presented the rally version of the Y, only without the Martini Racing logo. Cesare Fiorio was responsible to develop the Lancia Stratos, including he helped pursuing Enzo Ferrari to get the Ferrari Dino V6 engine, which was quite easy as Enzo Ferrari was not fond to deliver these engines to Lancia. It's a little bit a mysterium how he did it. I mean, there's the legend that Ferrari delivered these engines to Lancia, but as they not had been happy, they just dropped all the engines before Lancia's main entrance. So one morning, the Lancia people found the Ferrari engines before the door and put them inside their race cars and made them quite successful. Also, Cesare Fiori, as a driver, he was a two-world championship in powerboat racing. In 1918, he analyzed at Lancia to develop a turbo engine for Formula One. Very few known story. This idea had been created to provide this engine to the Toolman team, quite small team. So this is, I think, a nice fun fact, especially considering that we are originally a Formula One podcast. In 1984, he had been appointed to the head of sporting activities of Fiat, including a seat on the board of directors of Juventus Football Club later in 1988. Also in 1988, he had been appointed to the head of the Squadra Corse Alfa Romeo, where Alfa Romeo had been focusing on touring car racing, first in Italy and then later in the 90s, very successful, dominating the German touring car championships with the four wheels Alfa Romeo 155 Ti. From 89 to 91, he had been sporting director at Ferrari. To be honest, not that successful. That's why in 91 he lost this position already after 2 years. It was a time of Nigel Mansell and also where he had Alan Prost, which quite unfamously left/had been fired from the Scuderia Ferrari. Still something which fans are discussing, what really happened. From 94 to 95, he had been team manager of Ligier. Ligier at that time was owned by Flavio Briatore. 96, he had been involved with the small Italian 40 team. Then in 96, a little bit later, he returned to Ligier. Then to be finally from 98 to 2000 being sporting director as another famous small Italian team, Minardi. I want to have a short look on Toolman, as again, they could have been the customer of the potential Lancia Formula One engine. The British team had been founded in 1926 by Edward Toolman and had been active in Formula One from 81 to 85. So, as far as I remember, they had been somewhere in the lower midfield, which is quite successful staying in Formula One because small team, very limited resources, and important in that time for Formula One, as quite classically drivers entered in the small teams where they could present it themselves. Mostly their only task was to beat um, the other driver of the team because it was impossible to compete for victories or points. Its entry was announced in November 1980. At this time, the team had been in discussion with Lancia related a turbocharged engine, but then the team decided to use a turbocharged version of the hard F2 engine, which they already used in their Formula One, in their Formula 2 team. Tolman is famous because here in 84, Ayrton Senna had its debut, and I don't have to tell you who Ayrton Senna was. In the 85 season, the Toleman F1 team had been acquired by Benetton, their main sponsor since the beginning of the 85 season. So Toleman not disappeared, but you may say it evolved into the very successful Benetton team. But let's return to Cesare Fiorio. Now he owns Masseria Camada, which is located between Ostoni and Ceglie Messapicas in the old town centers in the province of Brindisi. It's a farm that produces extra virgin olive oil. Primitivo vin, meaning Primitivo does not mean its taste is primitive, but they try to have this wine, produce this wine in a very natural way. Also, corn, vegetables, cheese, fruit, and eggs from the farm owns hen. So something quite similar as, for example, we see in Petro Dinis. He also started his own farms, trying to use very natural ways to produce food, wine, etc. I think, sorry, Petro Dinis, I think no only food, no wine, but also very similar concept to work very sustainable to produce their products. You can visit the farms, especially you may enjoy it if there's a racing weekend. You may see there the races together with Cesare Fiori on the left or right of you, while he will comment the race, the activity. So I am sure a quite unique experience. Also, of course, you can, not of course, but you can see there the front body of the Ferrari, is which Nigel Mansell won the Brazilian Grand Prix. So it's a quite unique experience, wine tasting together with watching Formula One. If you are interested, go to this website and maybe you can book your next holidays. If you do so, please give us feedback. How had been your experience? Gunnar and I not only recommend visiting the museums, we also always recommend you to check out for the books if you want to dig a little bit deeper into the cars, races, or the biographies of the drivers, engineers, car owners. Always great tales. So here, good news. Just have been published some days ago the biography about Cesare Fiorio. This book was written by his other son, Cristiano Fiorio. Cristiano did not become a driver, but he stayed in this industry, in the sports. He's today the Alfa Romeo head of strategic projects, like, for example, the new 33 Stradale. So he's vice president at the Stellantis companies. You may connect with him via LinkedIn. Before his actual position, he was also a Formula One manager at the Alfa Romeo Sauber team. So he stayed also in this industry, and he wrote this book about his father's legacy, not only writing, but also including a lot of interesting photos. The only down point at this time, it was just published in the Italian original version. I don't know if it is planned to have an English version too. If you are able to understand Italian, interested in the topic, in the person Cesare Fiorio, in rally sports, Formula One in the 1980s, the book is, for example, available at Amazon, also outside Italy. So that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed our look on the little bit forgotten Lancia Formula One team, speaking about Lancia Motorsports in general, coming up with this little fun fact that Lancia may have returned in the 80s, being an engine provider, and speaking about Cesare Fiorio. So if you enjoy these topics, check out for our earlier episode. Like this episode, always appreciated, and have a look on our future episode. Again, you can see them YouTube Music, Spotify. If you're only able to listen because maybe you are driving yourself, we are practically available on all audio platforms. If you are into music, we have some playlists, as for example, the Data-Driven F1 mixtape, which features a lot of songs which have been directly inspired by the sports, by certain drivers. So this may be something for you too. With this, thank you for your time, and see you next time. And hopefully again together with Skanda Pogrevna, we will see. Bye bye.